Think a chiseled jaw, a fat wallet, or a flashy ride is what hooks respect and pulls people in. That's the lie most guys swallow. Chasing six-packs, six figures, and status like it's the golden ticket to being wanted. But riddle me this. Why do so many stacked, good-looking dudes still get shrugged off, sidelined, or stuck begging for a scrap of admiration? Surface winds fade. Real pull runs deeper. The raw deal? Attraction isn't what's in your mirror or your bank. It's the steel in your spine. History's heavy hitters, the men who owned rooms and bent fates, weren't always pretty or loaded. They had something sharper. Presence that stops you cold, self-mastery that bends chaos, a mindset no storm could crack. Stoicism forged these giants, from emperors to legends, not with flexing, but with quiet, unshakable force. A man who radiates pull doesn't grovel for claps or fish for "you're enough." He strides in, calm, locked in, emotions on a leash, and the air shifts. Not loud, not cocky, just a gravity that demands eyes without asking. His worth isn't borrowed from a car or a title, it's carved in how he cuts through life. Deliberate, steady, a blade of intent. Spot these traits in yourself? You're not just hot, you're morphing into the rare breed others can't ignore. Admired, respected, magnetic by default. You're not chasing the spotlight, you're becoming the damn sun. Ready to see the signs? Let's unpack it. First, lock in. Like this video, subscribe to Victory Stoic, share it with a brother who needs the wake-up. Drop "I own my core" in the comments to stake your ground and hit us. What's the one trait you think makes a man untouchable? We're forging a tribe of iron-willed kings. Join the ranks. Number 1. You live with a clear purpose. Most people wake up every morning and go through the motions. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. They drift through life without a clear sense of direction, reacting to whatever happens rather than shaping their own path. But a man who is truly attractive, one who commands respect and admiration, does not simply exist. He moves with purpose. He has a reason to wake up every morning, a vision that drives him forward. The Stoics believed that a man's strength lies in his ability to define his path and walk it with unwavering focus. Seneca once wrote, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." Without a destination, any road will do. And that is exactly why so many men feel lost, restless, and unfulfilled. The most magnetic men in history weren't just strong, smart, or wealthy. They were men of direction. The story of John Lasseter, a man who refused to drift before Pixar became one of the most successful animation studios in the world. Before Toy Story revolutionized filmmaking, there was a man with a vision, John Lasseter. He wasn't a billionaire, a celebrity, or someone born into power. He was just an artist who believed that computer-generated animation could change the world. But in the early 1980s, Hollywood wasn't interested. Traditional animation was still dominant, and the idea of using computers to create films was seen as a gimmick. When Lasseter worked at Disney, he pitched the idea of CGI animation. They fired him. Most people would have given up, taken another safe job, and moved on. But Lasseter was different. He wasn't just working a job, he was chasing a purpose. Instead of quitting, he joined a small, struggling division at Lucasfilm that was experimenting with CGI technology. That division was later bought by Steve Jobs and became Pixar. For years, they struggled, making short films with no financial success. But Lasseter didn't care about immediate rewards. He was focused on his vision. He knew that if they could prove CGI animation worked, it would change the industry forever. In 1995, after a decade of relentless work, Toy Story was released, the first fully CGI animated feature film in history. It was a massive success, grossing over $370 million worldwide. The film didn't just change animation, it changed Hollywood. Imagine if Lasseter had drifted through life, settling for a paycheck instead of a purpose. Imagine if he had listened to the people who told him it wasn't possible. The world would never have seen Toy Story, Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, or any of the Pixar masterpieces that followed. Purpose separates the extraordinary from the average. A man without purpose is like a ship without a compass. He may move, but he has no real destination. The world is full of distractions, tempting you to waste time on things that don't matter. Social media, meaningless entertainment, chasing short-term pleasures. These are the weapons that steal your time and dilute your focus. But a man with purpose, he doesn't waste energy on things that don't serve his mission. He doesn't live for the weekend. He He doesn't let fear, failure, or rejection stop him. His vision is stronger than his obstacles. Think about the men you admire most. They weren't necessarily the smartest or richest, they were relentless in pursuing what mattered to them. Elon Musk risked everything to push the boundaries of technology. Kobe Bryant obsessed over perfecting his craft. Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome with wisdom and discipline, not for glory, but because he saw it as his duty. How to live with purpose 1. Define your mission. Ask yourself, if I could dedicate my life to one thing, what would it be? The answer doesn't have to be grand, it just has to matter to you. 2. Cut out the noise. Distractions will always be there. If something doesn't bring you closer to your goal, it's pulling you away from it. 3. Take relentless action. Purpose isn't just about thinking big, it's about doing. Make progress every single day, no matter how small. The lesson: a man with purpose is unstoppable. You don't need to have your entire life figured out, but if you wake up every morning with a reason to move forward, you are already ahead of most people. Purpose makes you magnetic, not because of what you have, but because of who you are becoming. Attractive men don't drift. They don't chase trends or live for approval. They define their path, and they walk it, with or without the world's permission. Number 2, you have unshakable confidence. Confidence isn't about arrogance, loudness, or trying to prove something. It's about stability, certainty, and knowing exactly who you are. A truly confident man doesn't need validation from others because he already understands his own worth. He moves through the world with quiet assurance, unaffected by trends, opinions, or temporary setbacks. This kind of confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. It comes from discipline, self-awareness, and facing challenges head-on. You don't need to announce it. People can sense it in the way you carry yourself. It's in your posture, the way you maintain eye contact, the way you speak with conviction. You don't shrink yourself to please others, nor do you try to dominate a conversation just to be heard. You're simply comfortable in your own skin. When life throws obstacles your way, you don't crumble. You don't let rejection or failure define you because you know that setbacks are just stepping stones. Every challenge is an opportunity to refine yourself, and every failure is just data, feedback to help you grow stronger. This is why truly confident men don't fear rejection. They don't hesitate to take risks. They know that their value isn't determined by a single outcome, and no temporary loss can shake their foundation. Real confidence is built from within. It's not something you put on like a mask, it's something you develop by repeatedly proving to yourself that you can handle whatever comes your way. When you cultivate this, you become a force that people naturally respect and gravitate toward. You don't demand attention. You command it simply by being the man who doesn't waver. Number 3, you never stop moving forward. Some men let their past define them. They dwell on mistakes, cling to old regrets, and let past failures dictate their future. Others surrender to circumstances, convincing themselves that life is beyond their control. But the men who command respect, admiration, and attraction are the ones who refuse to be stuck. They are always moving forward. No matter what happens, failures, setbacks, betrayals, they don't stop. They don't waste time complaining or waiting for external validation. They understand that every day is a chance to improve, to refine, to push further. They know that strength isn't about how many times you fall, but how relentlessly you rise. This mindset isn't just about success, it's about identity. A man who is always growing, always evolving, becomes impossible to ignore. He doesn't remain the same year after year. He doesn't seek comfort over progress. He refuses to be stagnant because stagnation is the death of potential. People notice this kind of energy. They see someone who is not easily discouraged, who refuses to be defined by past failures, who is too focused on what's next to dwell on what's lost. This kind of man is magnetic, not because of what he has, but because of who he is becoming. When you embody this, your presence alone sends a message. You are not a man who waits. You are a man who moves. Number 4, you have high emotional intelligence. There are men who are quick to anger, easily offended, and controlled by their impulses. They lash out when criticized, let small inconveniences ruin their day, and allow emotions to dictate their actions. Then there are men who carry themselves with a quiet, unshakable presence. They listen before they speak. They observe before they act. They move through the world with control, not because they suppress their emotions, but because they understand them. This kind of emotional mastery is rare. It is not something you are born with. It is something that is forged through discipline, awareness, and experience. A man who possesses it is immediately recognizable, not because he demands attention, but because people feel his presence. He is the one who remains calm in chaos, steady in uncertainty, and unmoved by petty conflicts. He does not react to every provocation. He does not let his mood be dictated by the world around him. He is a man who owns himself. For years, Daniel was the opposite. He was the kind of man who prided himself on being passionate, someone who stood up for himself in every argument, someone who never let a slight go unanswered. When someone challenged him, he fought back. When things didn't go his way, he let frustration consume him. He believed his emotions made him strong, but in reality, they made him weak. He was easy to manipulate, easy to provoke, easy to control. One day, during a heated discussion at work, his boss said something dismissive. Daniel snapped. His voice rose, his words became sharp, and in the moment, he felt powerful. But as soon as the meeting ended, he realized the truth. He had lost control. He hadn't won anything. He had simply reacted, just as expected, just as predictable as always. That night, he thought about how often his emotions dictated his life. How many opportunities he had lost because he was too proud to let go. How many relationships had suffered because he couldn't step back from an argument. How many moments had slipped away because he had been too focused on proving himself instead of actually being in control. From that day forward, he made a decision. No more reacting, no more losing control, no more being a slave to his emotions. It wasn't easy. It took time, discipline, and countless moments where he had to remind himself to pause, to breathe, to observe instead of react. But something changed. He stopped explaining himself to people who didn't matter. He stopped letting insults or disagreements throw him off course. He started choosing his responses carefully, speaking only when necessary, acting only when it served a purpose. And soon, people began to notice. They listened when he spoke because they knew his words carried weight. They trusted him in difficult situations because they knew he wouldn't lose his composure. He became a man that others respected, not because he forced them to, but because he had mastered the one thing most men never do, himself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the essence of emotional intelligence. A man who can control his emotions controls his future. He is not shaken by the chaos of the world, nor is he ruled by fleeting feelings. He moves with purpose, speaks with intention, and acts with conviction. He does not need to prove his strength. His presence alone is proof. Number 5. You are not easily manipulated by emotions or social pressure. Most men are controlled by two things: their emotions and the expectations of others. They react impulsively to their feelings, shifting direction based on temporary moods. They follow social trends, afraid of standing out, afraid of rejection. But the men who command the deepest respect, the ones who are genuinely attractive, are different. They do not allow external forces to dictate their thoughts, actions, or beliefs. This ability to resist manipulation isn't just about willpower, it's about self-mastery. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Epictetus warned, if a person gave away your body to some passerby, you'd be furious. Yet you hand over your mind to anyone who insults you, allowing it to be disturbed and troubled. Have you no shame? A strong man does not let society, emotions, or temporary opinions control him. He owns himself. The science of nonconformity and attraction studies in evolutionary psychology show that women are naturally drawn to men who exhibit independent thinking and emotional stability. A 2016 study published in Personality and Individual Differences found that men who resisted social influence and maintained their own opinions were perceived as more attractive and dominant compared to those who conformed to group norms. This aligns with the evolutionary principle that leaders, not followers, were the ones who thrived and passed on their genes. Another study from the University of British Columbia found that men who displayed a neutral, composed demeanor, rather than excessive smiling or emotional reactivity, were rated as more attractive by women. This reinforces the idea that emotional control and self-assurance signal strength, reliability, and leadership. The story of Jack, the man who refused to follow the crowd. Jack grew up in an environment where social validation dictated everything. His friends dressed the same, talked the same, and chased the same goals, not because they wanted to, but because they feared being different. Jack followed along, keeping his real thoughts to himself. But deep down, he felt trapped. One day, while out with his friends, a heated argument broke out. Someone made a controversial statement, and one by one, the group nodded in agreement. Jack disagreed. He knew they were wrong. He felt the pressure to conform, to nod along just like everyone else. But instead, he stood firm. He calmly explained his perspective, not to argue, but because he refused to betray his own thinking. His friends pushed back, mocked him, tried to convince him to fall in line, but Jack didn't need their approval. He had his own mind, and no social pressure could shake that. In that moment, something shifted. The group began to respect him more. Even those who disagreed took him more seriously. Over time, Jack noticed something else. People gravitated toward him. Not because he sought attention, but because his independence made him different. The story of Michael, the man who mastered his emotions. Michael was a rising executive at a major corporation. Smart, ambitious, and talented, he had everything going for him, except one thing: he was easily provoked. If a colleague criticized him, he took it personally. If a deal fell through, he lost his composure. If someone insulted him, he reacted immediately, letting anger cloud his judgment. His emotions controlled him, and people noticed. Then one day, during a high-stakes meeting, a competitor made a direct insult toward Michael's company. Every instinct told him to fire back. But instead, he paused. He controlled his breathing, looked his opponent in the eye, and responded with measured precision, not emotion. He didn't need to defend himself with aggression. He let his presence do the talking. That meeting changed everything. His colleagues began to see him not just as a smart executive, but as a leader. His emotional discipline set him apart in a world where most men react without thinking. He had learned the most valuable lesson of all: the strongest man is the one who cannot be controlled. Why this makes you unshakable. A man who is not easily influenced by his emotions or by social pressure is a man who commands respect effortlessly. He does not chase trends. He does not let insults dictate his mood. He does not seek validation from others. Instead, he moves with conviction, acting only when necessary, never just for show. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A real man doesn't give his heart away lightly, nor does he allow others to make his decisions for him." This is the essence of strength. When you own your mind, control your reactions, and refuse to be swayed by temporary influences, you don't just become more attractive, you become impossible to ignore. Number 6, you have a calm and commanding voice. A man's voice is more than just a way to communicate. It is a reflection of his inner state. Some men speak too fast, afraid of losing attention. Others raise their voice, mistaking volume for authority. But a man who truly commands respect does not need to be loud or hurried. He speaks with clarity, confidence, and control. His words carry weight, not because he forces people to listen, but because they sense his presence, his certainty, and his unwavering composure. The power of a controlled voice. Science has shown that a deeper, calmer voice is naturally more attractive and authoritative. A study from the University of Aberdeen found that men with lower-pitched voices were perceived as more dominant and trustworthy. Another study published in the Journal of Nonverbal Behavior revealed that people who spoke slowly and deliberately were viewed as more confident and intelligent compared to those who spoke too quickly. This is not just about biology, it's about perception. A man who speaks in a controlled manner signals emotional stability, decisiveness, and self-mastery. When you hear someone who speaks too fast or stumbles over their words, you assume they are nervous or unsure. But when someone speaks with measured confidence, without unnecessary filler words, and without rushing, they naturally draw attention. The story of Christopher Nolan, a voice that commands attention. In Hollywood, directors are often loud, authoritative, and demanding on set. But Christopher Nolan, the mastermind behind The Dark Knight, Inception, and Interstellar, is the complete opposite. He doesn't shout. He doesn't raise his voice to control a set filled with hundreds of people. Instead, he speaks softly, slowly, and with absolute clarity. At first, newcomers on his sets are surprised. They expect a director to assert dominance by being loud. But soon, they realize why Nolan's approach works. Because when he speaks, everyone listens. His calm, deliberate tone commands attention not through force, but through presence. He never rushes to fill silence, never speaks more than necessary. And in doing so, his voice becomes more powerful than any shout ever could be. The story of Alexander, from overcompensation to true presence. Alexander used to believe that to be heard, he had to be loud. In meetings, he spoke fast, trying to prove his intelligence. In social situations, he talked over others, afraid that silence would make him invisible. But despite his efforts, people rarely took him seriously. They heard him, but they didn't listen. Then one day, during a conversation with an older mentor, he was told something that changed his life. Power is not in how much you say, but in how you say it. That moment forced him to reevaluate his approach. He started paying attention to great speakers, leaders, actors, thinkers, who spoke less but said more. He slowed down his speech, choosing words with intention. He embraced silence, no longer afraid of pauses, and he noticed something remarkable. People leaned in when he spoke. They paid attention, not because he was loud, but because his words had weight. Over time, Alexander's voice became his most powerful tool. He no longer fought for attention, he commanded it effortlessly. Why a strong voice makes you unforgettable. A man who speaks with control projects certainty. He is not rushed because he is not seeking approval. He does not need to dominate a conversation because he understands that true influence comes from how people feel when he speaks, not how often he speaks. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Never be overheard complaining, not even to yourself." A man who controls his voice controls his presence. He does not fill the air with meaningless words. He speaks with conviction, composure, and intention. And because of that, when he speaks, people listen. Number 7. You embrace solitude and do not need constant company. Most people fear being alone. They fill their time with distractions, chase validation from others, and constantly seek social interaction to avoid the discomfort of solitude. But a truly strong and attractive man does not fear being alone. He embraces it. He does not seek company out of insecurity or boredom. Instead, he uses solitude as a tool for self-reflection, growth, and mastery. The strength in solitude, the ability to be alone without feeling lonely, is rare. It is a sign of a man who is self-sufficient, emotionally independent, and deeply in control of himself. He does not need a crowd to validate him, nor does he seek external distractions to fill a void. Instead, he turns solitude into an advantage, a time to sharpen his mind, refine his vision, and focus on his goals. The Stoics understood this well. Seneca wrote, "A wise man is never less alone than when he is alone." This is because a man who values his solitude is never truly lonely. He is always in the company of his thoughts, his ambitions, and his purpose. The story of Nikola Tesla, a man who thrived in solitude. When people think of great minds, they often picture social figures, men who dominated crowds with charisma. But Nikola Tesla, one of history's greatest inventors, was the opposite. He was a man who thrived in isolation, dedicating his time alone to the pursuit of groundbreaking ideas. Tesla deliberately avoided social gatherings, believing that solitude allowed him to think deeply and without distraction. While others sought entertainment and validation, he spent nights alone in his lab, sketching the future of electricity and technology. It was in this solitude that he conceived ideas that would shape the modern world: alternating current, wireless energy, and radio transmission. Tesla understood something most people never will. Solitude is not a weakness, it is a weapon. It allows a man to focus with intensity, to separate himself from the noise of the world, and to create something truly remarkable. The story of James, learning to be alone without feeling lonely. James used to fear being alone. He always had plans, always surrounded himself with people, always checked his phone for the next distraction. But deep down, he knew that his need for constant company wasn't about enjoyment, it was about avoidance. He feared the silence, the empty space where his thoughts would surface, forcing him to confront himself. One day, after a failed relationship and a series of friendships that felt empty, he decided to do something he had never done before. He stopped seeking company. Instead of filling his schedule with meaningless outings, he started spending time alone, reading, training, setting goals. At first it was uncomfortable, but soon he began to enjoy his own presence. He no longer needed validation from others. He no longer feared being alone with his thoughts. And then, something changed. People started noticing. His presence became stronger, his energy more grounded. He was no longer a man seeking attention, but a man who was at peace with himself. And paradoxically, the more comfortable he became alone, the more people were drawn to him. Why solitude makes you unshakable? A man who can stand alone is a man who can stand anywhere. He does not compromise himself to fit in. He does not fear silence. He does not seek distraction. He is fully present, fully focused, and fully in control. He understands that the greatest battles are fought internally, and solitude is where they are won. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." A man who masters solitude masters himself. And when you master yourself, you become the kind of man who does not chase attention. Attention naturally gravitates toward you. Number 8, you have a refined style and take care of yourself. A man's appearance is not about fashion trends or expensive brands. It is about self-respect. The way you present yourself to the world reflects the way you view yourself. A man who values himself takes care of his body, his grooming, and his style. Not to impress others, but because he holds himself to a higher standard. The power of a well-presented man. Throughout history, the most influential men were not just defined by their intelligence or strength, but also by their presence. Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, and Winston Churchill all understood the power of appearance. They knew that a man's posture, grooming, and attire communicated confidence before he even spoke a word. Science supports this idea. A study from Princeton University found that people form judgments about competence and trustworthiness within 100 milliseconds of seeing someone's face. Another study published in the Journal of Fashion Marketing and Management found that men who dress well and groom themselves properly are perceived as more confident, reliable, and attractive. This isn't about vanity, it's about self-awareness. A man who presents himself well signals discipline, self-control, and attention to detail. He doesn't dress well to impress, he dresses well because he takes pride in himself. The story of Daniel, from sloppy to sophisticated. Daniel was intelligent, ambitious, and driven. But there was one problem. He never cared about his appearance. His clothes were wrinkled, his grooming was inconsistent, and he assumed that his skills alone were enough to command respect. He believed that real men didn't need to care about things like style. Then, one day, he was passed over for a promotion. When he asked why, his boss told him, "You're smart, but you don't look the part." That sentence hit him hard. He realized that in every room he walked into, his appearance was sending a message. And it wasn't the message he wanted. So, he made a change. He started dressing with intention, choosing outfits that fit well and suited his personality. He invested in proper grooming, kept his posture straight, and took care of his physique. The difference was immediate. Not only did he start getting more respect at work, but people began treating him differently. And the most surprising part? He felt different too. His confidence grew, not because of the clothes, but because he had stepped into a higher version of himself. The lesson: your presence speaks before you do. A man's style is not about following trends. It's about having a signature presence. A man who is well-groomed and well-dressed carries himself differently. He walks with confidence, he speaks with authority. He understands that how he presents himself to the world reflects how he values himself. Seneca once said, "A well-ordered appearance is a reflection of a well-ordered mind." The way you take care of yourself is not just about looks, it's about self-mastery. When you refine your presence, you don't just look better, you become a man who is impossible to ignore. Conclusion: true attraction comes from mastery, not appearance. Attraction isn't about a perfect face, expensive clothes, or the right connections. It is about how you carry yourself, how you think, and how you move through the world. A man who owns his emotions, his purpose, and his presence does not need to chase attention. He naturally draws it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "A man's worth is no greater than his ambitions." The most attractive men are not those who have already achieved everything, but those who are constantly striving, constantly growing and constantly refining themselves. They are men of discipline, direction, and self-mastery. If you recognize these signs in yourself, keep going. If you are on this path, do not stop. You are not just becoming more attractive, you are becoming stronger, sharper, and more respected. And that is far more powerful than fleeting admiration. Now, take action. Like this video, subscribe to Victory Stoic, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And in the comments, let us know, which trait do you believe is the most important for a man to develop? Let's build a community of strength, purpose, and self-mastery together.